3 books that I recommend you read to help move the needle in your real estate business or help you get started. They actually gave me a leg up on the competition and my peers who were just like willy-nilly getting into the industry. These books really help solidify not only the concepts behind investing in real estate, but the concepts and the mentality behind having money, using money, and different ways to think about money. Because let's be honest, real estate investing is extremely risky. It's very risk oriented. However, you can mitigate that risk if you use the right principles and you build up the skills necessary to make this work. Now, of course, just reading these books is not going to do anything for you if you don't take action on it. So don't just read these books, expect things to magically fall into place, because they're not. But read these books with the intention to grow yourself and grow your skills and the concept behind real estate investing to help leverage that in your future deals and your future communications with other people in the industry. This is going to help you not sound like a newbie, and when you're talking to people who are experienced, it'll help you stand out in the crowd. So let's start with book number 1. Now, I don't have this book physically anymore because I gave it away at some point. I can't remember where I gave it, who I gave it to, but it's just one of those books that 90% of real estate investors got into the industry because they read this book, and that's going to be the OG Rich Dad Poor Dad. Rich Dad Poor Dad is not just a real estate investing book. In fact, I would say it's more so a mentality and mindset book regarding money, and then how you can use that money and think about it differently than what most common people think about it and leverage that to make you a fortune. This is a really great beginner's book just to get into the concept of this whole world that you're about to embrace and maximize your returns using the same concepts in the book. Short summary, it's about his rich dad and his poor dad. His poor dad was somebody who was a teacher. He worked for the government, and his poor dad believed in getting a secure job, safe income, and something that has benefits. Now, if you're like me, whenever you hear about that, you think about everybody in your family. Everybody's talking about get a secure job, get the highest paying job, make sure it has all these benefits, right? And so that was a real eye-opener for me, because I'm like, well, that's all the advice that I've ever been given is to get these things. So if he's the poor dad, why is he that way? And he goes on to explain why that is. Now, his rich dad was his friend's dad who was in multiple businesses, who thought about things differently and thought about money differently. And so we need to be able to grow ourselves so that way we can think about things differently and think outside the box from standardized thinking to make us more money, to leverage our time. A lot of people think it's selfish to make a lot of money because they think all they care about is money. When in this book, it talks about how Rich Dad actually cared more about other people, because not only did he create jobs, he created time for himself to spend it with those he loves and those things that he wants to do and the charities that he wants to benefit. And you're actually being more selfish by just being comfortable and finding a secure job with these benefits, not really helping anybody but yourself. And so that flipped my mindset on a lot of things. And I was like, man, if that's not something to get you to change and get you to take action, then I don't know what is. So that's number 1, Rich Dad Poor Dad. Number 2, I do have this book in front of me. It's the book on real estate investing with no and low money down. And it's by Brandon Turner, the guy who created Bigger Pockets. And the reason why this is one of my favorite books, not for wholesaling, not for money, but real estate in general, because it goes over, in my opinion, all the different strategies to get into real estate with no money. And I don't know about you, but when I started, I had no money. At first, I watched Grant Cardone and I thought I was going to buy apartments, and I had $7,000 in my bank account, and I was going to be able to buy a 30-unit apartment complex with that. But the reality is, you're not going to do that unless you partner with somebody. And then, what benefit are you bringing to them by doing that, unless you find a deal? And even then, you got to learn how to leverage that relationship to maximize your returns. Now, this book talks about everything under the sun as far as subject to deals, sandwich leases, seller financing, all those things in between, and even talks about wholesaling just a little bit. Now, when I got into the wholesaling, it wasn't my first choice, and actually it wasn't even on my radar. Like I said, I wanted to buy apartment complexes, but when I read that, at the end of the book, it talks about putting yourself out there on Bigger Pockets and just networking with other investors. And I did just that. Now, this other investor happened to be wholesaling, and I had lunch with them. And through that interaction, he really enjoyed getting to know me and meeting me. And he thought I had what it takes to be a part of their team and cold calling some leads that they had for wholesaling. And that is how I got my start. If I would have never read this book, I would have never had that opportunity. And if I would have never taken the action on the stuff that's in the book, I would have never got my start in wholesaling and creating over $1 million in net worth from just little actions like that or reading the book. So that's number two. You got to read this book, especially if you're an absolute beginner. It will change your mind on how to get into a property without having the cash to do so. There's many ways to do it, and you don't have to be rich to get into real estate investing. You just have to be very creative, and you have to be very common sense smart. You don't have to be book smart. If you're finding value from this video, please subscribe down below, as it really does help the channel, and I really want to help as many people as possible. Number three is going to be Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. Now, Chris Voss was a hostage negotiator, and he talks about in this book how to negotiate like your life depends on it. Pretty catchy. Who better to teach you negotiation than somebody who negotiates with terrorists and hostage takers to save people's lives? If that's not the ultimate negotiation, I don't know what is. So if you could take those same principles and things that he learned through the government that he worked for and apply those into your real estate business, or any business for that matter, imagine having the skill to be able to do that and maximize your returns. When you get into this industry, yes, you don't have to have any skills. You don't have to do anything. If you hit enough numbers, you're going to be able to make up for the lack of skill. However, wouldn't you like to capitalize on all the deals you come across to maximize your potential earnings just by reading a book? And all of these books that I'm talking about are extremely quick reads. We're talking about a day or less if you spend a couple hours on it. Now, I know most of us are playing video games, we're going out and having coffees, we're meeting with our friends, whatever it may be. If you made it a goal to read these in a week or less, I guarantee you could do it. And it could change your life. It changed mine. Now, one of the cool things about this book that I actually leverage in my script when I talk to sellers, and it's helped me, I think, dramatically compared to the competition. And I'm gonna give you a freebie here. One of the things we constantly ask when we first make the phone call is, hey, am I catching you at a good time? He talks about this in his book and how setting up for a yes answer actually hurts you whenever it comes to negotiation. And the reason being is because whenever you set them up for a no answer, like, hey, now a bad time, no, now not a bad time. What happens is when people get a call from somebody, or a cold call rather, they just want to scream no at the top of their lungs because they're getting called by scammers, want to scream no. So by giving them the opportunity to say no from the get-go, psychologically it lets their guard down, so they're more likely to say yes down the road when it comes time to pitch the offer. Now, it doesn't work every time, but I have noticed its results, and that's why I'm able to land these $60,000, $70,000 deals, and even this rental property that I bought with $365,000 worth of equity. It's all by using principles that I found in books that I read, because let's be honest, I'm not the smartest guy in the room. I'll be the first to admit it. But I will find the smartest people and find the best ways to do things and implement them in my business and test them out for myself. And whatever I find that I like, I'll implement, and things I don't like, I don't implement. And you'll find that even in these books that have really good information, there's going to be things in there that doesn't really apply to you, or you just don't resonate with it. And so that's what I'm going to talk about next, is some of these honorable mentions. I only wanted to cover 3 books. We covered them, but I want to give you some honorable mentions I think are really important, and they helped impact my life. George Clayson's The Richest Man in Babylon is talked about in many OG books. It talks about the richest man in Babylon, right? Why he was the richest man, what principles and money philosophies did he implement that helped him obtain that status. And he helped Babylon, and he helped all these people become rich as well by using this principle. Very quick read. I'm talking about if you read fast, then you can read in like 3 hours or less. The Wholesaling Bible. Now, this book I did read when I first started. There's a lot of principles in there that I don't align with. Just, I think, a little bit dated as far as concepts and theories of wholesaling. But there are some really good networking strategies in there. One of them I implemented on my very first time going to a real estate investors association. It talks about asking this question to really make a name for yourself and stand out. And that question is, hey, what is your biggest goal personally or professionally? And once they answer that question, your next question is going to be, how can I or somebody in my network help you get there? And so now you're becoming a person of value to people who are experienced in the space, and they recognize that you're looking to trade value for their time and maybe for their expertise. That book alone helped me stand out in that real estate investors association, and people looked at me different than the beginners that had come there with me as well. And when I said that the very first time, the guy was like, man, you've done your homework, haven't you? And I felt really good about that, helped boost my confidence, especially as a complete newbie going into this arena with all these experienced investors. And so little things like that are gonna help give you the edge on your competition and your peers. The Go-Giver. I don't have that book in front of me, but The Go-Giver talks about one of the things that I had an issue with, and as men, I feel like we generally have this problem of not receiving gifts and not receiving acts of generosity, right? All too often, our parents or our family, we try to give them a gift. They're like, oh no, I don't need that. Don't give that to me. Thank you so much, but I don't need that, right? The Go-Giver talks about how giving is actually just as much receiving as it is giving. And it was a complete mind shift for me because I was like, what does that mean? But by receiving a gift from somebody, you're actually giving them the gift of giving. And that sounds like a tongue twister, I know. But by doing that, you're completing the cycle of the law of attraction, or abundance. By doing that, you're receiving all these gifts and you're welcoming these gifts into your life. And so it's actually a really good thing to receive. And the Go-Giver is talking about how you can give by doing just that. And lastly, one of the ones I really like, it's become one of my all-time favorites. It's more so as a father, I would believe, but it does have like the rich man or rich dad, poor dad concepts about money, just on a more basic level and more in detail. And it's called The Wealthy Gardener. It starts out a little slow, especially if you're getting the Audible book. The narrator's kind of slow, but after my first time reading it, I found parts about it that I really enjoyed and really loved. And real quickly, as a brief description, it's about a kid who goes to the bad school, right? He's at this bad school where all the bad kids go, and this guy is in there as like a facilitator, and he teaches them things on the side. And one of the things he tries to teach them is the concepts about money. Because as you know, in the real estate space, there's a lot of guys that aren't from your standard background or family background of having a good family, things like that. Usually it's the guys who have to grind it out most times. For example, myself, started in Section 8 housing, getting evicted from house to house, had no money. Everything I owned fit in my, at the time, girlfriend's car. Now I have this 5,600 square foot house and all these things, but I didn't start out that way. And real estate is very much that kind of space where you meet those kinds of people. And The Wealthy Gardener talks about all these principles that maybe we didn't grow up with that we can learn on a very basic and rudimentary level. So The Wealthy Gardener is probably one of my all-time favorites. It's at my top 3. But this has been a video on all the books that have helped me get my start and help me propel myself forward in the real estate space. And I hope they help you out too. Stay tuned because we are creating that free Discord here soon. We're going to help teach you guys once a week for free as a means to give back to the community and to help us all grow. So again, be sure to subscribe, comment, like down below, and we'll see you guys in the next one.